Shabbat Shalom, Phoebe. Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through an Hebraic worldview of Scripture and our times. So tonight we're going to get into, hey Jim, great to see you. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Hey Anita, great to see you, honey, from Taiwan. Shabbat Shalom. Tonight we're going to get into a topic that is huge, and obviously we're going to try to really kind of condense it, but this is a very large topic that we're going to be talking about, and I'm sure there's a lot in your heart about it already. Hey Beth, good to see you, honey, in Colorado. First of all, we know Micah 6:8 says, human being, you have already been told what is good, what Adonai demands of you, no more than to act justly, love grace, and walk in purity with your God. And again, tonight we're going to be looking at the ecosystem in the justice work. In about the year maybe 2016, I was sitting at a table in a diner in Brooklyn. My two sons were there. My daughter-in-law, Anita, was there, and a few other young friends from the church. And we were actually discussing the upcoming political election. And I was just kind of talking about Black Lives Matter activists challenging Bernie at a rally, if you remember back then. And then later challenging Hillary to answer for criminal justice policies under her husband's administration. And hey, Rye, good to see you. And Hillary responded, look, I don't believe you change hearts. I believe you change laws. You change allocation of resources. You change the way systems operate. You're not going to change every heart. This was her response. And I was talking at the table and said, why would I was talking about this incident, and I said, why would Black Lives Matter challenge Bernie or Hillary? Why didn't they go challenge Trump or Romney? And Nandi, a young woman of color who was part of our faith community that I loved, and she loved me, still does, and I still love her, put her hand up like this and went, nah, white people don't get to question the strategies of how Black people confront racism. And I knew this was a big moment. But in my heart, I was thinking, wait, even me? I've been actively fighting this for 47 years. Even me? I realized, however, I needed to shut up and I needed to learn. And it was not up to Nandi to somehow reason with me in a way I would understand. It was up to me to research and find out. Now, for white people, this part is crucial. It's where our white privilege, our fragile egos, and our white savior issues come to play. So I shut up and I went home and I did more digging into these specific situations. And what I found was Black Lives Matter's participants, Donacia Yancey and Julius Jones, told a news outlet that they were not satisfied with Clinton's answers. And I'm quoting them now. I'm taking out a longer bit, but I'm quoting them. What we were looking for was a personal reflection on her responsibility for being part of the cause of this problem that we have today in mass incarceration. And so her response, really targeting on policy, wasn't sufficient for us. So, of course, they knew that laws on laws were treating the symptom and not the disease. And from that time on, I realized that there were some things I didn't understand, and I dove into educating myself. This incident for me was the turning point. It was part of my process of awareness of a level of privilege that I was operating in under the guise of being an ally. It was also the beginning of my realization and acceptance that we all have different parts to play in the ecosystem of justice work. And staying in our lanes is very important, as well as accepting that there will be many lanes. So now let's move forward to the protests, like 5 years later, that we see now. Well, there are all kinds of people that are making judgments on these, on the way, on the how, on the why. Many different opinions from within and without. And many of the people speaking the loudest with those opinions are just like I was. They don't have the right to make a judgment. And others do have the right to their differing opinions. And in those differing opinions, they can be vast. And in still other opinions in that movement, there are people who feel like racism is the biggest issue in our world. People who feel like the environment issues are the biggest in our world. People who feel like our corrupt government systems are the biggest issues in our world. Do we all need to be on the same page doing our justice work in the same way? Beth, Rye, this is totally the video you posted today, the ecosystem. I didn't see that. Cool. The end game clip. I cried for 15 minutes. I got to check that out. Rye and I are in sync. Hey, Rob, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. So they say this year of 2020 is the year of clear vision. In other words, things are coming to light. What people have maybe hidden in the dark is having the light of day on it now. And once we see it, we need to respond. So it's almost like there's this sense that there's now a line in the sand. And the question is, where are you going to stand? Because you can't bury your head any longer. If you do, you're still standing on the side, just with your head buried. No longer are there churches where a pastor can avoid talking about these social justice issues and racism and all of these issues by calling them political and under the guise of we don't talk about politics. God is uncovering so that choices of alliances can be made. As King says, how long will you falter between two opinions? It's a very real work that's happening. So you've probably seen me do this before, many of you. This is a yoke. And this is what beasts that carried and pulled things, like as far as agricultural things, farming things, or even working in different ways. And the animal's head one went in here and one went in here. And they pulled this whatever they happen to be pulling. But what happened with this, which is really interesting, is if one was bigger and one was smaller, it made the bigger one sort of go around in circles because they weren't the same size. And if they were different and those differences were yoked together in a not healthy way, the bigger one was going to go in circles. So we all know this verse in 2 Corinthians 6:14, do not yoke yourselves together in a team with unbelievers. Now this is the context of this understanding of a yoke. It's not just don't be with anyone different than you. It's do not yoke yourselves together in a team with unbelievers. And yoke, by the way, to the rabbis always suggested a belief system. It's what Yeshua talked about when he talked about the yoke. So it was the yoke of the rabbi was a belief system. Do not yoke yourselves together in a team with unbelievers. And unbelievers is not the kind of thing that we would think of where a person is holding up their Bible standing in front of a church that they've never visited before. And that's a believer. An unbeliever is actually by what you do. It's the Greek word apistos, and it means unfaithful and not to be trusted. So it's not what a person says out of their mouth. It's whether they're trustworthy and faithful. Let's go on with that. For how can righteousness and lawlessness, and this is the word anomia, and it means without God's laws, be partners? What fellowship does light have with dark? So this text here, which is really interesting. Hey, Kate, good to see you, honey. Which is really interesting, shows us that we cannot be tied or connected in any significant way with people that are unfaithful, that is, and lawless, which is not without God's laws, is what it literally means. Now, what are God's laws? Hey, let's talk about love and forgiveness and not oppressing other people. God's laws are very straightforward, and they're very much the foundation of all justice. So this is a very simple meaning. We can't have relationships with people and be unequally yoked with them and expect to do anything significant. We are seeing, and we have to make choices. Now, within this good and God thing that seems to be happening in this year of 2020, the year of perfect vision, where we're seeing things that maybe we weren't aware of before. Things are being uncovered, motivations are being seen. Maybe the neighbor that you're talking to, or that cousin, or that brother-in-law that seemed like such a nice guy, all of a sudden says something that is really racist, or sexist, or xenophobic. And you hear it and you're like, wait, what? Did they just say that? And now it's time to go in there. Ask for clarification. What did you mean? And then confront. No more can we just kind of gloss everything over. So within this good and God thing that is happening in this year of clear vision, here's what we need to know. Whenever God comes in to do something, if the enemy can't stop it completely, he'll twist it. He'll pervert it. So there is a strategic polarization in this. A kind of picking sides that is narrowing and not connected with the truth in the reality. Now, whether you believe that is Russia or the 1% or demonic influence, it really doesn't matter. There is a move towards polarization. There's a polarization that is trying to twist the way that we choose the good side to stand on. Now, let me give you an example that has nothing to do with racism or protests at all. The SARS-CoV-2 situation, right? So there was a drug that 45 was talking about a lot, hydroxychloroquine. And the rumors and the reporters were throwing around a lot of things about how his posse had investments in the company that developed hydroxychloroquine. And he said he was taking it off book, and he thought it was the cure for COVID-19, and we're all going to take that. And so here was this side, right? This was this camp. This went from it's not real and you don't need face masks to, oh, but when you get sick or if you want to prevent it, here's the medicine that's going to do it, hydroxychloroquine. That made all the people that were in the medical fields even, and everyone else say, no, hydroxychloroquine is not the answer. Vaccines are the answer. And a lot of people weren't even willing to examine hydroxychloroquine simply because the president said it was a good thing. And it turned out not to work anyway. There's another drug that's actually doing better. And when they actually did the studies, the real studies, they found that it really didn't work anyway. But here's the point. There were people that were actually willing, because of their hatred for Trump, to not even consider a possible cure, but to wait for a vaccine simply because Trump was involved. That's how bad polarization is getting. Now, we have a president who is devoid of personal decency and even truth itself. He is instinctively a divider rather than a uniter. However, he's capitalizing on an already existing polarization. It's bigger than him. And it's trying to get us who are in this work for people together so separated and disconnected that we are weakened in our efforts. There is a polarization in the justice work. Now, I'm going to just talk about 3 ways that we see this tonight. There's a lot, and maybe you want to add some. as we're talking. The polarization, the language polarization. I'm going to talk about 3. The language polarization. Now, what does that mean? Well, there are words and phrases that can be very racially charged. One phrase in particular, well spoken, right? We all know what that means when a white person refers to a person of color as well spoken. That's racist. And we all know why. I think all of us, as I'm looking at you now, know why that is. But I get the power of words. I really do. Words become things. And words are microaggressions and all of that. And for those of us who are white, we need to educate ourselves as to what these charged words are. Sometimes males also need to educate themselves as to what those words for women are. It's too much already with just saying, well, that's not my heart, that's not what I meant. Learn and do better. But in one of the marches I was in, I saw 2 people actually get into a screaming match over the use of the word victim as it related to those who were murdered. Because one said, no, victim, we don't want to connect these people that were murdered as being victims because victimhood shouldn't have a place in this march. And the other person was like, no, but they were victims and they were almost coming to blows about this sign, okay? Again, this polarization. And although everyone has their own convictions, and they should have their own convictions, words are powerful things, and sometimes they mean different things to us. But let's give grace and space for differences of those convictions, and even for growth. The differences of language can be talked through. We can disagree, but we're going in the same direction. We're on the same side. So as we learn or as we stick to our own convictions, let us have grace for others who are sincerely with us and may have different convictions. Language is huge, and I completely understand that, and it always will be. But if a word is used and that word, instead of discussing what it means to both of us and trying to figure out, actually causes more polarization in the very movement that we're in, that's problematic. Are you with me? And do you see that? If you see that, let me see a thumbs up. Hey, Randall, great to see you. Derek, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. Language. The second one, within this sort of polarization, the one and only way polarization. That is suggesting there's only one way to do this. Now, we all should feel passionate about things, but also sometimes allow others to have passions that may be different if we're all working towards the same end. Now, let me give you an example of this, and this is a big topic now. A vote for Joe Biden. There's a group of people that feel that that people of color are not really honored or listened to or heard from the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party just assumes that they're going to get their vote. And right about now, there's a lot of people of color that are saying, hey, you know what? You have to earn my vote. And we saw that with a comment. If you're black, you know, you're not going to vote for Trump, right? Or you can't vote for Trump and be black. And that assumed and said a lot there, right? Hey, Mariposa, yes, words can mean different things for different people. Absolutely. So a lot of people of color were saying, no, he has to work for my vote. He needs to listen to our agendas. He needs to hear us. You can't just assume that we're going to vote for somebody because he's a Democrat or because he's not Trump. And there's another camp that says, but if you don't vote, then Trump is going to get reelected and our country is screwed even more, right? And so now what's happening? Now these two camps are battling and there's polarization in a group of people that neither one want anything bad for this country. Are you following me? And do you see that? And the people that aren't going to vote for Biden unless they hear more things that maybe he understands, when you ask them about what they're thinking, they say, well, if Trump does get reelected, we are either going to move out of the country or we're going to burn the place down. Now, you have to remember, Dr. King was not only not accepted by most whites, but not accepted by a lot of black churches as well, because they were afraid that he was actually going to make things more dangerous for them. Now, everybody loves him. Even racists quote Dr. King. And they also presume what he would be thinking and saying now about what we're seeing. Why? Because somehow they view him now as non-threatening. And the reality is, as Andre Henry said, even non-violence brings violence. Dr. King's non-violent justice movement did that. They killed him. And now they quote him to condemn the protests. Here's the important thing that we need to remember here as we're systematically being divided in our differences. Here's the important thing. Systems of oppression are interlocked. Racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, environmental destruction, corrupt economic systems that power all these things, these are all related systems of oppression, and they are intertwined. There's an intersectionality with them all. They reinforce and they feed upon each other. And to end any one of them, we have to address them all. All stay alive by isolating the individual, by convincing people that, oh, this is a result of some personal failure, rather than the larger structure of oppression directed at a whole class of people in order to fuel the power. Hatred and power are working together in a variety of ways. And what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from our community, which is why I'm talking about this, and what I'm seeing in my eyes is that systematically there's beginning to be a polarization in the people that are trying to counter these things. Malcolm X talked about the northern fox and the southern wolf. The southern wolf, he said, shows you his teeth in aggression, and you know where he stands. The northern fox shows you his teeth like he's smiling at you. Both of them want to eat you, but the northern fox is actually more dangerous. There are a variety of ways that oppressive power continues its reign. And it's why when politicians say now, in this time, oh, let's talk, let me learn from you, many people of color are seeing the northern fox's teeth. And can you blame them? So again, we have to have this understanding and this grace for each other in this time. And again, let me see your thumbs up if you're feeling this, if this is what you're wrestling through or this is what you're questioning. The last thing, which I think we all would say, yes, is the energy vampires polarization. One of the big things I see in this whole justice work is the haters trying to sap our energy with rhetoric, with blatant falsehoods or misrepresentation of facts, with gaslighting, with what about. And then when you see something, whether it's on a Facebook page or an Instagram or wherever it is, when people start to respond to that, then you can see the fracturing even in that response. Well, if someone says something racist, someone may react, F you. And someone may say, let me systematically try to show you why this is false facts. And you know what? If both of them are following their heart, this is the ecosystem, the diversity of the ecosystem in this social justice movement. Because both of them did what they were supposed to do. But when we judge each other concerning our responses to the racist, or we allow them to judge us like you're irrational, you're abusive. Listen, we need to remember the enemies of justice are well trained as energy vampires. Do you feel this? Read the book of Nehemiah. The attempts to build a city where there would not be injustice was constantly interrupted, constantly distracted. It's why Nehemiah 4:17 says the laborers who carried the load worked with one hand and held a weapon with the other. They were everyone was so trying to distract them that the people that were rebuilding the wall said, hey, you know what? Nothing's going to distract me. So I'm going to have my weapon in this hand and I'm going to have my tool in this hand. And I'm not going to stop the work. And if you try to stop me, I will hurt you. I will not come down off this wall. Now, justice work, as all people of color know, is exhausting. Ryan says at the end of the day, they both end up with as the lamb chop on their plate. Yes, that's exactly right. That's what he said. Yep. It's exhausting, but the work cannot stop. And we must work and fight together, all in whatever areas we're connected to, while we're supporting others to do their work. In other words, all of us may have different lanes. Some of us may even be on the same lane, but actually doing things a different way. And you know what? That's good, because it takes a diverse ecosystem to do this work. So we have to gauge what we put our energy in. These energy vampires are well trained. They know how to sap your energy. They'll have an hour conversation with you about what about black on black crime. And you'll think that you're making headway, and they'll walk away and you'll see them do it to somebody else. This is their MO. And we need to make sure that we don't fall into that. And also that we don't get divided in our responses to that. We have to be embracing of all the ways people choose to fight the fight. This polarization is an attempt to squeeze us, to narrow the path, to marginalize us, to isolate us, and to confine us, where it takes all the lives doing all of our works. Derek says, not a thing. Exactly. Crime and crime. Ha ha. Exactly. It's not a thing. And maybe that's what you say every time, Derek. Not a thing. Move on. Which is good. That's your lane, right? To marginalize and to isolate and to confine us is what they're trying to do. In nature, diversity means resilience. A prairie that has hundreds of different plants growing together can resist pests or respond to storms that would devastate a monocrop field of GMO Roundup corn, right? In justice movements, we need that same diversity in order to thrive. So we have to stay open and we have to keep learning. Andre Henry and so many others, which, by the way, if you're not following him, I think we all are, definitely follow him. But he has so many recommendations of books to read, and there's all kinds of things that are people are posting now. Read this, watch this, listen to this. White people, read, talk to people of color. Don't stop listening and learning. What we all need to learn and understand and remember is racism is learned. It is absolutely not by design. Empathy is innate. Ever see a baby? And I see my granddaughter when, thankfully, my kids send me videos all the time, and I see her mirroring her mommy. Ever see a baby mirroring? See, that is that they're so involved and so connected to that person that they actually start mirroring their actions. That's how we're designed, to connect. So function according to design. Randall says we must attempt to relate concerning a common goal as opposed to desiring to be right or have the only right approach. Yes, true truth, Randall. That's what I'm really saying in a nutshell right there. Of course, Randall has been fighting this fight for a very long time, and Randall has an abundance of grace and patience, I got to tell you, but without wavering. He doesn't compromise and he doesn't lose his message, which I really respect. Ian, so great to have you join us. Love you. We got to catch up, by the way. So, great quote here. The conviction that we know others better than they know us, and that we may have insights about them they lack, but not vice versa, leads us to talk when we would do well to listen, and to be less patient than we ought to be when others express the conviction they are the ones who are being misunderstood. And that's a quote by Emily Pronin. And isn't that the way that it always seems, right? We think we can judge other people, but when they try to look into our souls, no, you can't see into my heart. Exodus 20:18. We talked about this verse last week. It says it was talking about when Moshe leads the people out of captivity in Egypt, and they're gathering around this mountain, Mount Sinai, and God is going to give the law, the way that their whole foundation for how they would live and function as a community and eventually as a nation. And they gathered together at the base of the mountain. And Exodus 20:18 says, all the people experienced the thunder, the lightning, the sound of the shofar, and the mountain smoking. So all the people witnessed that together. And the Rabbi Yochanan and many other extra biblical writings says God's voice, as it was uttered, split up into 70 voices in 70 languages so that all the nations should understand. Now, this is an interesting story about this experience. Many rabbinic writers and rabbinic works say this, that this voice that they saw split into 70 languages, because there weren't just Jewish people, as you know, that came out of Egypt. There was also Egyptians and others who saw their God and wanted to be with them. 70 languages so that every person would understand. The number 70 in Scripture is usually associated with the totality of nations. What does that mean for us? What I comprehend about the words God speaks is not exactly what you may comprehend. It is as if when God was laying down this foundation for how to live, God wants to speak directly into your heart and at the same time directly into someone else's heart. Maybe even saying the same words, but completely unique to our hearing, to each of us. We may be hearing the same thing differently, but it's all God. And this is what I believe still happens today. Hey, Josh, good to see you. Unity and diversity is God's way of things. It's in his nature. The names of Yahweh all show different facets, just like a diamond of his personality and his character. Now, watch this, follow this. These personalities operate in different ways and serve different functions and all contribute to the whole. And this will give us a bigger understanding of how we can look at all the different ways to do and work towards justice. Well, one of God's names is El Rachem, the God of compassion. And with that, we see the shepherd who leaves the 99 to go after the one, because that one life is what matters. One sheep's lives matter, because that was the life that was in danger, right? So we see the God of compassion. That's one facet. That's one name of God. That's one part of his character and his personality. And we have the Elohim Mishpat, the God of justice, that floods the earth and burns up a city because of sin. Hello? In him, in both of these names, we see the totality, the true picture of unity. Unity is not the same as uniformity. Unity is taking all the things without losing their identities and allowing them to be part of the whole. Deuteronomy 16:20 says the pursuit of justice is not an elective that we can view as optional. It literally tells us justice, justice, you shall pursue. We're going to close this time with the lighting of the Shavuos candles. And traditionally, the mothers of the home light the candles, the Sabbath candles, which symbolize the light of peace, of joy, and of unity. And then she traditionally encircles the candles 3 times, which is a gesture that welcomes in the Sabbath. Blessed are you, O our Lord, our God. Amos 5:24 is what we're going to pray. Let justice well up like water, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. God be with you in unity and diversity in the ecosystem of social justice. God bless you. Shabbat Shalom.